And I remember putting my hand on the door of one of my high volume restaurants and said, God, how can I should be on the mission field? I don't know how you can use me where I am. And I opened the door and I heard a barrage of different languages come out. And it was like I clearly heard him say, I've brought them to you. Serve where you are. And I think that was a pivotal understanding in my life that where God places us, there's opportunities all around us.
Yeah, Cheryl, welcome to the show. We're honored to have you. I think it's always helpful to give a little bit of context, maybe 2-3 minutes of just a little bit of your background and where you're from and what you did for a career, and just kind of give people a little context on your story.
Okay, very good. So we'll pretty much focus on my career, but I wouldn't be anything, of course, without Jesus and my beautiful children. So I have 4 children. I was engaged in the restaurant business early on. I worked my way through college in the restaurant business and ended up working for McDonald's Corporation. I spent 17 years with McDonald's Corporation, worked out through the system up to director of operations in the Denver area, which we covered parts of 7 states, and I had 5 departments. I left there after 17 years and purchased my own restaurants in North Carolina in Johnston County, and I was an owner-operator for McDonald's for 16 years. And then I sold my restaurants in 2012, and since then God has been faithful in keeping me very engaged in some of the work that He has for each of us. So.
And Cheryl, when you think back to your time running the stores, I remember you telling me about, showing up in a store and nurturing these kids, by and large kids, right? Young people, to believe in themselves and as a result to deliver great service. And I think I see that extending now into your second half as you're coming alongside talented young leaders and helping them nurture not only their ability to lead nonprofits, but operate well in business settings and as ambassadors for the Lord. So take us inside on McDonald's and how your skills played out. What did you see as your unique ability?
Well, I think when I first opened my restaurants, they were existing restaurants. When I first got to my restaurants, I was used to leading a very professional team of construction engineers, real estate agents, training people, and other people. And then all of a sudden, I was engaged in a situation where everyone who seemed to be in my restaurants were. This is the job that hired them. They weren't looking for a career. They were looking for a placeholder or a short-term fix to their life. And I remember all of a sudden realizing that I had to work with these young people in such a way that more of my personal power versus professional power would impact them. Because like one of them said, well, I was looking for a job when I got this one, and I can go across the street and get another one. So I realized that they were the engine that was driving the restaurants, and that it wasn't me. I couldn't run to the grill, get the sandwich done, send it up front, and serve the person. I needed to work through my people to run the restaurant. So I made a decision to pour into their lives and to make the job as much of the job that they could enjoy as possible. And so we put people first pretty much in the organization. And I think it was very clear. I think that servant leadership that you learn from Jesus, it's not about me. It's about the people that you're touching, and it's about the people that you can impact. That's what it's about. And so it was exciting to see these kids. Many of them were first time or moms who were looking for part-time work, and to watch a number of them move up into the management ranks. So that's where I put my emphasis. I remember I got engaged with C12 early on in my business career. And one of the things that I really learned how to do was to align your business with your spiritual life and your total life. And I remember putting my hand on the door of one of my high volume restaurants and said, God, how can I should be on the mission field. I don't know how you can use me where I am. And I opened the door and I heard a barrage of different languages come out. And it was like I clearly heard him say, I've brought them to you. Serve where you are. And I think that was a pivotal understanding in my life that where God places us, there's opportunities all around us. And so I've tried to make an effort of looking for those opportunities. I would like to do it every day, but sometimes I miss some opportunities, but keep looking for opportunities where you can serve where you are.
And you came through the halftime journey or the rediscovery process, reinvention process, maybe 15 years ago or something like that. Is that about right? Maybe 12,
Correct.
15.
Yeah.
So I've watched you over these years find different contribute ways to contribute using these same unique skills in Esperanza around microfinance in the Spanish-speaking countries, and then locally with Mission Increase, helping nonprofits in deploying business skills to be more effective at what they do, and mentoring people,
Yes.
right? And there's probably others as well as nurturing your own family, which is growing and takes a lot of time. So take us through this evolution. How did you discover what you really wanted to do after selling your McDonald's stores that you felt would be the soil, that you could be the soil that could produce a compounding return in for the Lord?
Well, I felt like I was relatively young when I sold my restaurants. I was 65 and I was planning on staying till 90. And as God does, there's an interruption. He was very clear to me that it was time for me to get out, that I needed to focus my life in other areas, that I was almost spending too much time in my restaurants because I was single at that point. My daughter was in high school and I had lots of time. So I was spending so much time in the restaurants. And God said I needed to come out and look at other things. And so I fortunately found halftime. And when you're a retired person, and I only started saying retired in the last year or so, I always said redeployed because I don't believe in retirement. I really believe that God has something for us till the very end. And so as I redeployed, I discovered halftime. And it was so exciting for me to get the concept of trying those low cost probes, because when you are a redeployed business person, so many people want a piece of you and so many people want asked to be engaged with you. And I needed to find where God wanted me, and I needed to find where my sweet spot was. And so I started doing some of those low cost probes, and I discovered that I really, really fit at the intersection of business and nonprofits, that I am not a totally nonprofit oriented person, that I have some real strong feelings about responsibility, accountability, and stewarding what God gives you well. And so there were within the Raleigh area, there was a group called Mission Triangle. They did come from Mission Increase, but they moved to Mission Triangle, where they spent time with approximately 200 to 300 businesses every year, teaching them biblical business principles to help run their nonprofit. And so I discovered that, and it was exactly what I needed. And from there, I got involved with some specific nonprofits that fit that same mold, because that's how God created me. I spend my time thinking strategically. I think of metrics that we should be looking at and how we hold each other accountable. And it's a sweet spot when you find a nonprofit that does the same.
Cheryl, how did it become clear to you that it was time to move on from your McDonald's stores?
Oh, you're going to ask me a hard question, so we'll go for that. During this process in late 2011, early 2012, during my devotion time and quiet time, I'm reading Tim Keller's Counterfeit Gods. And I'm reading this book as well as my devotion time. And during this process, McDonald's Corporation gives you one restaurant at a time. They don't give you a territory. I had 3 restaurants, and there was an opportunity for a 4th restaurant to come up. And I was really excited because all of my metrics were in the top quintile for McDonald's, and I was well qualified. It was in the territory. They don't like people to be too far from a distance standpoint. And all the boxes that McDonald's I had for offering up an additional restaurant were checked and were very, very positive. And so I went into a pitch process, and lo and behold, I didn't get it. And a number of my peers said, "Oh, you're going to get it. You're going to get it." And it just was so clear to me that I was, and I didn't get it. And being a fallen Christian, as we sometimes are, I grumbled and blamed the corporation for not getting it. And why did they do this to me? And I was reading Counterfeit Gods. And during that process, it became very clear to me that I had turned my career into a God, that I was in my restaurants day in and day out at nights. And I was spending so much time there that my priority, I was doing all the right things. We had corporate chaplains. We had Bible studies. We shared the gospel with our people. I was doing all the right things that we as Christians want to do. But my heart wasn't in that. It was in the McDonald's. So I prayed about it for 7 months, and I made the decision to sell. And that's what I did.
That's amazing. I respect you for actually leaving. Many people have that same epiphany and then have a hard time ever relinquishing control.
Oh, it was hard. It was hard.
I bet it was. What skills from your corporate career in running as an owner operator have translated really well into the nonprofit work you're doing?
So I think currently what I'm doing is coaching people in business, and many in business or nonprofit. So I have 6 to 8 people that I'm coaching that are in either the business world or the nonprofit world. So the skills that I learned during that fit very well to this. Sorry. And so I'm able to encourage business people or professionals to be all that God has called them to be, both in their families, in their communities, in their businesses for God's kingdom. And so those skills that I learned are often, as you well know, experiences that you learn through either failure or success. And sharing those with others is what's helped me be an effective coach at this time. Shortly after I left McDonald's and was in the halftime process, I got to know about Hope International. And Hope International, as many people know, are in over 20 countries, and they do microfinance with the poorest of the poor. And I have a heart for helping people who are in that area where they need extra help to financially cover their day-to-day needs, and they're really struggling. And so I have a real heart for that. But one of the things I started doing early on was reading When a Helping Hurts, and how we need to just really go in and come alongside someone and teach them how to set up a work product that they can use to increase their income. And so I got involved with Hope International, and through Hope International, I found out about Esperanza. And they serve in the Dominican Republic. And what Esperanza and Hope does is give small loans, $2 to $250 loans for cottage industries, for people to start small businesses. And they do it to people throughout 20-some countries. And it's so exciting because these folks are entrepreneurs at heart. They have ideas. They have exciting ways to make the money that they need to cover their life. And they just need that one step, that income. And Hope's payback on these microfinances is like 98%, because they meet in groups where they encourage each other and share with each other and pay back through that group this small loan that they have. And so it's very effective, and it's around the world. I served on the board for Esperanza for a number of years, and just had so much joy going to the Dominican Republic and visiting out in these small areas where people were doing the microfinance. So it's an exciting nonprofit that is doing very well.
And how did you find, those were largely women entrepreneurs as well. I think maybe more than 80% of the loans go to women. How did you find you were able to bridge the gap between the scale of work that you're doing at McDonald's, even just the tech and the IT systems you would have and helping them grow an embroidery business or a wedding rental business or a little small taxi with mopeds, that kind of thing.
Well, I think my role pretty much was more of the support of the people who were running Esperanza, the support of people who were running Hope. So my role was more that. But as a entrepreneur here in the United States, I worked with entry level people and worked with people who were at the front lines of putting their lives together so that they could sustain their lives. And so I could see very clearly how someone could take a small $200 loan and parlay it into a business. One of the situations that I found so enjoyable was I met, this time it was a man, and you're right, about 80% of the people are women. But this man raised chickens, and he'd get up at 4 in the morning and he'd slaughter his chickens and clean them and go throughout the village and sell chickens to people for their daily meal. By 10 or 11 o'clock, people had bought what they needed for the day. So then he would go home and anything left, he would fry up and cook and make meals. And at 12 o'clock, he was going to the construction sites and selling these meals so that he had no waste. And in McDonald's, you were very careful on how you waste product. And to me, it warmed my heart to see someone who'd figured this out at the very basic level and was doing that kind of thing. And so I could come alongside with the director in the field and through an interpreter, tell them where I saw how they were absolutely doing the best they could with food waste, that they were maximizing their product, the efficiency with which he got it done, because he left the village by 10 o'clock so he could get home and get the meals ready for lunch. So this to me it's very applicable. What you do on a day-to-day business within a restaurant is very applicable to so many businesses. And I think this brings up a really good point because as I'm coaching businesses, I'm coaching people who are have a language school. I've coached people who had a factory. I've coached people who have a tech business, and we can take what we learn in the basic day-to-day stuff, and it applies to what someone else is doing. I was able to share with someone who is struggling with some of his personnel. And I was able to share with someone that I saw in my restaurant. I had a Hispanic guy who knew very little English, and he was very anxious to do the job right, but there was a communication barrier. So I went with him into the bathrooms, into the restrooms, and I got on the floor and I showed him how to clean the corners and clean the squares around all the corners that we needed done. And I showed him exactly what needed to happen. Oscar ended up being able to give me some of the top grades in the restaurant business and cleanliness. And he stayed with me the whole time that I was an owner operator for 16 years. And he felt there was an absolute loyalty because he trusted me, because I was able to work with him at the very basic level of his job. I was not the expert. And when he learned more English, I told him that you're the expert, that you're the person who does it right. I just have some knowledge that I can share with you to make your job better. And that's true in almost everything we do in life, is that the person who has the job, the person who is being coached, is the expert in that field and the expert in that company. I can share some of the things that I've gone through, share some of the things that happen with me, but they're the ones who have the answers to figure it out.
Can you talk through some of, obviously, I'm assuming here, but you probably could have financially retired when you sold your restaurants, but can you talk through some of the joy that you've received as you've been redeployed by God in this kind of second half?
Oh, it has been remarkable. When I sold my restaurants, the day I sold my restaurants, I had a to-do list with 83 things on it. And the next day I woke up and my to-do list was down to very, very few things. And there was some real tension there because I was very much attuned to working 60 hours a week plus more. A restaurant business is very intense. And all of a sudden I had all this time on my hand. And so beginning that search for my identity in Christ at this different stage of my life was exciting. It was fun to uncover those things. And what I learned during this time of discovery of where God wanted me to be is number one, God wants a relationship with me. He doesn't really want me to be doing all the time. And that is a real hard thing for many executives and many people who are at the top of their game. And all of a sudden their to-do list becomes smaller. He wanted a relationship. So I really was able to have a lot of joy in furthering that relationship. And I continue to grow my relationship with Jesus. And then from there, he showed me what he had taught me within McDonald's. I did not wake up as a teenager and say, I want to be a restaurant owner. I slowly moved into that position through opportunities and circumstances that happened. And then when I did sell my business, it was so clear the skills that God had given me as I moved through, that He'd honed in me as I moved through that journey of the restaurant business. And the skills that became so clear to me was the ability to sit and listen to someone's story, to clearly hear what they were saying, to ask some questions, and to help them sort out where they needed to go in whatever issue they were dealing with. Because we did this on a day-to-day basis at McDonald's. Constantly, someone wouldn't show up for work. We might be short a product. All of a sudden, 7 buses roll onto the lot. And each of these things, thinking on your feet on how to solve these things was something that God taught me how to do. It wasn't in my nature. And so now with my coaching situation, I can sit back, listen to someone's story, listen clearly to what they're saying, not what I have to offer, but what they're saying, and be able to pick out and hear what it is that they need to do in their next steps. And so that's been just a joy for me to discover that. I have so much fun in hearing other people's stories because I can just see how God is creating them and how He's using them and preparing them for the journey that He's on with them.
It's a little like a kaleidoscope. Remember when you were a child, there was this thing you looked in, and
Yes.
you turned it just a little bit, everything changed, right? And I find that in journeying with people on this journey from success to significance, that I'm sitting in the same place, but the action happens in the frame. And every story is so unique, and the discoveries they make are so unique. So, one last thing on this topic of your journey from king to sage. Chris Crane, who ran Opportunity International, you probably knew him from being
Yes.
on the board. He and I
Yes.
just written a book called Sage Stage, partly because he's been in the sage stage for longer than me. And I remember Peter Drucker talking about how great leaders move from warrior to king to sage. So you have made that transition as well. What are some of the 2 or 3 most important things you found when you move from CEO to coach or mentor or king to sage?
Oh my, I've learned so many things. So to boil it down to 2 or 3 things, I think one of the most important things is the value of the person that you're talking to and the person that you're working with, is to value their input and value their life story, because God has them on a trajectory. God has them on a journey that He wants for them to accomplish in their life. So to value their story means that I come alongside them, that I don't, it's not my job to change them. It's not even my job to necessarily educate them. It is more my responsibility to hear their story, ask some good questions, and then potentially point them to resources or work through whatever it is that they're working on. So value the person first. The second thing I think I've learned is that that not every person that comes into your life is someone that fits with you as a coach. I've coached people for 2 or 3 times, and I'm not the best fit. And so I'll refer them to someone else or refer them to an organization. And I think that's important because I think that I find that time is something that I really want to manage well and steward it well. So I don't have to die on that hill that isn't my hill, and I can move someone to somebody else. And then another thing that I've learned is that opportunities happen all around me. And so to look at each of those opportunities and see if it's what God has for me, and to not close my eyes to something that doesn't look like it quite fits, but explore it and check it out. And then if it doesn't, you can connect the person to someone else. So those are probably the 3 things that I've learned. Value the person. Not every opportunity is your opportunity, but keep your eyes open and see those opportunities that are around you and if they fit.
One thing that's gotten more clear to me, Cheryl, in the last few years is that your kingdom impact compounds, just like your wealth compounds. But it's quiet, right? Being a real estate investor, your compounding is quiet. Your buildings go up in value and they pay themselves off. And the next thing you know, you go, wow, how did that happen? So I see that now in the ministry kingdom impact world, like the helping people be everything God created them to be, including coming to know him. And it's breathtaking. How do you see this multiplying the 30, 60, 100-fold? Where do you see the work you might have done 10 years ago in someone's life producing compounding results now?
Well, I think there's a couple different avenues that I want to share with you. So first of all, I am so surprised at how God continues to open doors for me. I had coached a young man in Tunisia, and I had coached him for probably a very short period of time, and I set him up with other resources. 3 years later, I get a phone call from Saudi Arabia and said, I heard about you from this guy in Tunisia, and I was just wondering if you'd consider coaching me. And I've been coaching him for, I guess, 2.5 years now. And I smile sometimes when I think about it. Is here I was in Tunisia, and all of a sudden someone hears about me in Saudi Arabia. And so I smile about how God opens doors for us. So that's one of the things that I see for that 100-fold, is that there are opportunities around the world that we aren't aware of. I just last month, February, I was in India, and I was able to go into a company that had 120 employees. They had 2 different physical plants, and I went in and spent, 3 or 4 hours teaching Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of the team to about 40 Indian nationals. And it was just, it just gives me so much joy and so much fun to be able to do that. And then I come home and I see how God has allowed me to touch a variety of nonprofits that are having some successes beyond what I could do by myself. And it's that expansion of taking that talent that you have and investing in others, and it multiplies. I've had one of my coachettes, I call them coachettes, who just finished working with me for the last year, and she started turning a profit, and her business is taking off here in Wilmington. And she said, I can't believe it. She said, I can't believe that I am able to start looking for my first employee. And she was so excited. I'm sitting here. I had 180 employees, and she's going for her first employee. I'm as excited about her first employee as I was when I dealt with my 180. And so watching it multiply through other people, I think is what gives me the most joy.
Thank you for listening to the 100X podcast. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast service. We would greatly appreciate it if you could rate the show and leave us a review. This podcast is sponsored by Anchor Investments, whose mission is to build America's most generous real estate company. To learn more, please visit anchorinv.com.